It was Christmas Eve, and my mom, Diane, a retired schoolteacher known for her love of old traditions, decided to bring out the family photo albums. She said it was for Ethan, my fiancé, who had never spent the holidays with us before. Ethan, 32, worked as a freelance graphic designer and had a remarkable eye for details most people overlooked. He smiled politely as Mom placed the worn albums on the coffee table, the corners frayed from years of handling. We were all gathered in the living room of my parents' home in suburban Chicago. The space was warm and familiar, if a little cluttered, old throw pillows, framed school photos, and scented candles fighting for room. The rich smell of cinnamon and slightly burnt ham hung in the air. Christmas tree, modest and slightly lopsided, twinkled with soft yellow lights in the corner. It should have been comforting like every other holiday I remembered. But it wasn't. There was something uneasy about the way Mom kept glancing at Ethan, something in her voice when she spoke. The atmosphere felt like a song played just slightly off-key. Not enough to stop the music, but enough to notice. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Ethan, always calm and perceptive, sat beside me on the worn leather couch, his hazel eyes scanning the room with quiet alertness as my mom flipped through the albums like a hostess staging nostalgia. He hadn't said much since dinner, but then again, neither had I. That unspoken undercurrent, familiar and cold, had already crept in by the time the pecan pie was served. My younger sister, Lauren, perched on the edge of a floral armchair, sipped her Pinot Grigio with casual elegance. She wore a silk blouse I recognized from a high-end boutique downtown, the kind with no price tags. Her boyfriend, Jake, seemed content to nod along as my dad launched into yet another story from his car salesman days. I tuned most of it out, the cadence too familiar, the punchlines worn smooth from years of repetition. Dinner had unfolded with predictable choreography, applause for Lauren's recent promotion, polite laughter at Dad's golfing mishaps, and a practiced silence when it came to me. I was the family's quiet puzzle, the freelance writer still chasing deadlines and occasional magazine bylines, the one who never quite settled into the frame they'd constructed for themselves. I used to resent it. Now I simply braced myself and counted the hours. After dessert, store-bought pecan pie that clung to the tongue like sugar and regret, Mom clapped her hands together like a cruise ship activity director. "I dug out the old albums," she announced, eyes bright behind her bifocals, as if this wasn't a well-worn act in her holiday performance. We all nodded on cue. Lauren leaned in with an exaggerated, "Oh, fun!" while Jake smiled with the polite detachment of someone trying to date into a family without stepping on emotional landmines. Ethan, though, was unusually still. His fingers tapped a quiet, uneven rhythm on his knee, a tick I'd learned to recognize. He was thinking hard about something. Mom opened the first album with a familiar creak of its spine. Plastic sleeves were cloudy, curling at the edges, each photo a freeze frame of middle-class milestones. Birthdays with lopsided cakes, beach days at Lake Michigan, awkward school portraits that reminded me of metal braces and oversized sweatshirts. I barely looked, these were burned into my memory. The second album was more curated. Lauren as a baby in every possible context, first steps, first snow, first words immortalized in scrawled captions. Mom looked radiant in those shots, her hair perfectly feathered, her smile practically cinematic. Dad stood beside her, hand resting on Lauren's stroller like a proud campaign poster. I had always been told there were just fewer baby photos of me. "You came along when we were busier," Mom would say, or "we switched to video more by then." The third album was supposed to be mine. First glance, it was. Me in kindergarten, missing a front tooth. Me at age 6, bundled in a red parka, a static grin on my face. Then more, me at a playground, me by a frozen pond. Familiar, right? But Ethan shifted beside me. His hand, which had been loosely resting on mine, tightened. His posture straightened as if bracing for impact. His jaw tensed, and then he leaned in, eyes locked on one of the photos. "Emily," he whispered, barely audible over the hum of my mom's commentary, "don't you see it?" I blinked. "See what?" He didn't look at me. "How can you not see it?" His tone was low, insistent. Before I could respond, he flipped the page. Mom kept talking, laughing about a story I barely remembered, something about me trying to adopt a backyard raccoon. I was supposed to chuckle, smile, play along. But Ethan's body language had changed entirely. His fingers hovered just over the edge of the photo like it might bite him. I glanced at the image again. It was me, or it was supposed to be. But something was off. Not the setting. Not the clothes. Not even the expression. It was the sameness. The smile was identical to the last photo. The shadows fell at the same angle. The tilt of my head was exact. It looked like someone had taken one photo and copied it into different backgrounds. But who would do that? I tried to mask the alarm rising in my chest. "What is it?" I whispered. Later, Ethan mouthed, his eyes flicking toward my parents, then Lauren. So I played along. I laughed at the raccoon story. I complimented Lauren's new haircut. I said goodbye like nothing had changed. But under my skin, something had started to crawl. We left not long after. Ethan claimed a project deadline. Mom seemed disappointed but not surprised. Dad gave his usual one-armed hug. Lauren waved without looking up from her phone. In the car, Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 3 photos. He handed them to me without a word. I took them, my hands suddenly cold. The first was me at 6 in that same red parka. Brick wall behind me. Ordinary. But then came 2 more, me in front of a playground slide. Me standing by a frozen pond. My face was the same in each. Not just similar, the same. Same smile, same tilt of the head, same placement of hands. Even the shadows on my cheeks were identical. "I don't understand," I said, though I did. "I just didn't want to." Ethan's voice was calm, but there was a sharpness beneath it. "These are fabricated, edited, maybe even scanned and layered. The lighting doesn't change. The depth is wrong. Look at the shadow beneath your chin, it's the same in all 3. I looked again, and I saw it. It was like something out of a dream or a nightmare. The same photo dressed in different disguises. Then he pulled out one more. A baby photo. Blue eyes. Blonde wispy hair. A round, unfamiliar face. "This isn't you," he said. I stared at it. "That's Lauren," I said automatically. He shook his head. "No. Look closer." I did. And he was right. The features weren't quite Lauren's. Not my either. It was no one. Or someone else entirely. I felt dizzy. "I don't think they ever had real baby photos of you," Ethan said gently. "I think they substituted. Maybe even used early editing. Or took photos of someone else and tried to pass them as you." My brain scrambled for logic. Why would they do that? Who would even think to? "I don't know," he said. "But this isn't a mistake, Em. This was deliberate. Someone put a lot of effort into creating a version of your childhood that isn't real." The words fell like ice in my lap. The photo albums. The silence during dinner. The way Mom had looked at Ethan when she handed him the album, too expectant. Like she wanted him to see something but wasn't sure if he would. Or afraid that he might. I leaned my head back against the seat, closed my eyes. "So what does this mean?" "I don't know yet," he said. "But I'm going to find out." And just like that, the warmth of the holiday night evaporated. The cinnamon candles. the soft yellow lights, all of it now cast under the suspicion of something far deeper and far colder than I'd ever imagined. Not nostalgia, but a carefully crafted lie. The final photo was the kicker, me, Mom, and Dad standing outside a library, all smiles. But even at first glance, something was wrong. My outline was blurry, like I'd been poorly cut and pasted into the scene. The lighting didn't match. The direction of the shadows on their faces veered left, but the one beneath my chin slanted right. My feet floated just above the pavement like I'd never really been there at all. I laughed. A sharp, brittle sound I didn't recognize. So I'm a Photoshop project. That's creative. Ethan didn't join me. His brow stayed furrowed, his eyes tracing every pixel of the image. Why would they fake this, Emily? I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. I wasn't even sure the question had an answer that made sense. But 6 hours later, my voice was shaking over the phone as I tried to explain the unexplainable to a 911 dispatcher. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. The photos lay in front of me like evidence, each one a tiny betrayal that cut deeper the longer I looked. The realization didn't arrive like a lightning strike. Crept in slow, quiet cold like frost threading its way across a windowpane. I sat on the floor of our apartment, legs folded under me, the photos arranged with forensic precision. Ethan had fallen asleep on the couch, his arm draped over his eyes, but I couldn't close mine. I studied each photo the way he would, the way he taught me, look for patterns, for shadows, for what doesn't belong. And what didn't belong was me. The girl in the red parka? Her smile never changed. Not in any of the photos. Same slant, same stiffness at the corners like a wax figure. Her eyes didn't reflect the world around her. In one photo, snow drifted behind her. In another, bare trees loomed. But her hair was frozen in place, identical every time. Like a cutout. A sticker. There were no baby photos of me. Not one. No hospital bracelet, no blurry ultrasound, no footprints in ink. There were dozens for Lauren, every milestone captured, framed, and captioned with glitter pens. My first memory? A beige office. Fluorescent lights buzzing. Diane's hand crushing mine as she hissed, "Smile for the nice lady." I must have been 5, maybe 6. I didn't speak English yet. They said we came from Bosnia during the war. They said I was traumatized, that forgetting everything before age 5 was normal. The brain protects itself, my dad used to say, like he was reading it off a cue card. I'd believed it. What else could I do? But now, staring at those photos, those not photos, I wasn't sure of anything. I looked up at the ceiling, empty and white. My mind unspooled, tangled in fragments I'd buried. I remembered that I never called Diane Mama when I was little. I called her Diane. It had slipped once in kindergarten and the teacher corrected me. "You mean your mommy?" I'd blinked, confused. Then there was the silence around my birth story. Lauren got bedtime tales about how she was born in a snowstorm, how Mom had packed peanut butter crackers in her hospital bag. I got "You were strong. You didn't cry." As if I'd just arrived. There were no grandparents, no aunts or uncles, no old photos from the old country. "We lost everyone," Dad would say. "The war took everything." And I never questioned it. I just nodded. Like always. But then that email, how could I have forgotten? I was 16 on Mom's laptop checking the weather for a school project. A message popped up. Subject line, Ljabavi Moja. I didn't know what it meant, but there were hearts in the subject line. A name on a... I clicked, just curious. A woman's face. Dark hair, tired eyes, a sad smile. Writing in a language I couldn't read. Then it was gone, deleted. Blocked. Dan's hands had trembled as she shut the laptop. "Just spam," she snapped. And I'd let it go. Because that's what I did. Until tonight. Now the cracks had splintered wide open. I picked up one of the photos again. My eyes caught on the corner, something off with the texture. I angled it toward the lamp. The gloss wasn't even. And suddenly I could feel it, not just see it. A layer. A thickness where there shouldn't be. Like someone had glued something onto the photo. The weight in my chest grew heavier. Pressure steady and terrifying. And then, without warning, something surfaced, raw and blurry. A woman, not Diane. She had brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled. Her hands smelled like oranges. Her laugh sounded like wind chimes. I was clinging to her skirt, calling her mama. Her voice was soft, speaking words I couldn't place, but I knew what she meant. Then Din entered the memory. Younger. Her smile wide, too white. The woman with the orange hands knelt beside me. "This is your new friend, okay?" she said in a language I couldn't quite understand. I remember pulling away. I didn't want a new friend. I wanted Mama. The next flash, me crying, dragging on a coat too big for me. Someone hissing, "Don't say that name again. You'll get us in trouble." Then a new house. A strange bed. My voice hoarse from screaming for a woman no one would talk about. And Dan again, holding a stuffed bear toward me like a bribe. "Enough," she said, her voice sharp, cold. I don't remember falling to the floor, but that's where Ethan found me, knees tucked under my chest, fingers shaking. My breath came in sharp gasps like I was drowning. He didn't rush in, didn't speak. Just sat beside me, letting the silence stretch until it became bearable. Then I reached for my phone. "Emily," Ethan said quietly. "Are you sure?" No. I wasn't sure of anything, but I knew the shape of fear. And this was it. I dialed. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. 911, what's your emergency?" the operator asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out at first. My throat closed. Then, I think I was kidnapped. There was a pause on the other end. "Ma'am, are you in danger right now?" I stared at the photos, the shadows that didn't match, the baby who wasn't me. "I'm at home," I said. "I'm not hurt, but it happened a long time ago. I think the people who raised me, I think they took me." Ethan took the phone from my trembling hand, his voice steady in the chaos. "Hi, this is her fiancé. She's having a panic attack. She found childhood photos that look manipulated. No birth certificate, no baby photos, no early memories. She thinks she was abducted around age 5, probably overseas." The dispatcher's voice didn't waver. "What's your location?" Ethan gave our address with practiced calm. "We'll send an officer for a welfare check and pass this to our investigative unit," the operator said. "If you feel unsafe or the situation escalates, call back immediately." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I moved through the apartment in silence, folding laundry that didn't need folding, scrubbing clean dishes, opening and closing drawers like I might find answers in the cutlery. Ethan stayed close, not hovering, just present, his eyes following me, worry tightening the corners of his mouth. He made coffee at 4 a.m. Neither of us drank it. The next day, an email landed in my inbox. Subject, case open, reference #04127. An officer will contact you within 48 hours. It was real now. Not just photos and fragments. Not just suspicion. A file with my name on it somewhere inside a police department database. A life I'd lived and possibly stolen was now under scrutiny. 2 days later it came. 3 sharp knocks. Not rushed. Not hesitant. I opened the door to find Diane and my father, Tom, standing there. Just the sight of them froze the breath in my throat. Mom held a plastic Tupperware of chicken noodle soup, the lid sealed like a token of good intentions. She looked almost proud, like she was still playing the role. Dad stood stiffly beside her, hands jammed deep in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Years of practiced distance rested on his face. "Can we come in?" Diane asked, already moving forward before I could answer. Ethan appeared in the hallway behind me, his presence solid, silent, like a line drawn in sand. I stepped aside. I let them in. They sat down on the couch, our couch, like guests who didn't quite belong. Diane cradled the soup in her lap like a shield. Tom glanced around the room but didn't say a word. "We spoke to the police," Diane said after a moment. Her voice was taut, clipped at the edges. "They said you filed a report." "I did," I replied. Flat. Unapologetic. "You should have come to us first," she said, the hurt already loaded into her tone. "Before going to strangers." I stared at her. "Would you have told me the truth?" She blinked. Just once. That tiny flinch told me everything. "We didn't want to hurt you," she said quietly. Finn leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "So it's true." A silence settled. Then Dad sighed, rubbing his temples like the weight of years had finally caught up to him. "You're not ours, Emily," he said. "Not biologically." The air emptied from my chest. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't even hurt. I was numb. A silence louder than anything rang in my ears. Mom looked down at her hands. "Your mother was very young. Alone. She couldn't keep you. She asked us to take you when we left Bosnia." Asked. I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended. "Or begged. She wanted you to have a better life," Mom insisted, her voice trembling now. "It was war." She knew what that meant. I swallowed, my throat dry. "And where is she now?" Dad's answer came too quickly. "We don't know. We lost touch." Ethan's voice was level but cold. "Then why fake the photos?" Mom's fingers twisted in her lap. Her wedding ring turned circles on her finger. "You cried for her at first. 4 months. We tried everything. But nothing helped. So we started making memories for you. We thought if we gave you a story you could live in it, you'd forget." I stared at her, the words hitting like cold rain. "You erased my life." Dad's tone hardened. "We didn't steal you. We saved you." That word, saved, felt like a lie wrapped in comfort. And for one small, aching moment, I almost believed them. I wanted to. I wanted it all to be simpler than it was. But I asked the question that had haunted me since that night on the floor. What was her name? They exchanged a look. Mom hesitated. Then Dad exhaled. Mira Kovac. No last known address. No phone number. No letters. Just a name. A life reduced to 5 syllables. A woman I couldn't remember yet somehow missed. They left soon after. The soup sat untouched on the coffee table, still warm. That morning I sat in stunned silence, the edges of my world reframing themselves with every word Mira said. Ethan reached for my hand, but even his steady presence couldn't anchor me. I felt like I was floating, untethered from everything I thought was true. Mira was crying now, softly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I blamed myself," she said. "Every day. I thought maybe you wandered off. Or that I trusted the wrong person. I never stopped looking. When Facebook came, I searched your name every week. But I never found it. They must have changed it." "They did," I said quietly. "They gave me a new name, new birthday, new country. They never told me anything." Her lips trembled. "Do you remember me?" I hesitated. Flashes came, disconnected images, sounds, feelings. A woman humming in a language I didn't know. Cracked ceramic bowl. A hallway with green wallpaper. But most of it was smoke and static. Pieces, I admitted. Not enough. But I think my heart did. We both cried then. Not the kind of sobbing you see in movies. Just silent, exhausted tears like we were both grieving a lifetime lost in translation. After we hung up, I stared at the screen long after it went black. I didn't know what to feel. Grief? Rage? Relief? All I knew was that I couldn't go back to pretending. Truth had ruptured something in me, something sacred. And the people I had called Mom and Dad had done that knowingly. That evening, I called them. Diane answered. Emily. My name is not Emily, I said, voice steady. I spoke to Mira. There was silence. Then a breath. So it's true. You lied to me my whole life, I said. You didn't save me. You stole me. We gave you everything, she said, her voice rising. Food. School. A safe home. You gave me your silence, I cut in. And now I'm giving it back. Don't contact me again. I hung up. The moment was small. No dramatic thunder. Just a click. But it echoed in my chest like a door slamming shut on a version of myself I could no longer carry. Later, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Ethan held me while I stared out the window. The city moved on unaware. Horns honked. People laughed. Life pressed forward. And somewhere across the world, a woman who had lost her child now knew she was alive. I want to see her, I whispered. Then nodded. We'll go. As soon as you're ready. It would take time. Papers. Planning. Emotion. But for the first time in years, I felt the faintest pulse of something I hadn't dared to hope for, belonging. Maybe it didn't live in the past I'd been handed. Maybe it lived in the one I could choose now. And maybe, just maybe, the girl they tried to erase was finally coming home. 2 weeks later, Mira and I stood in a Chicago police station. She clutched a faded missing persons flyer, Amelia Kovacic, I've last seen in a blue coat. My first name. My real name. I kept looking at it, trying to bridge the gap between the little girl in the photo and the woman I had become. The officer listened quietly, nodding as we gave our statements. There wasn't much to debate. The evidence spoke louder than any words: falsified documents, doctored timelines, and an entire identity reshaped around a lie. We pressed charges: immigration fraud, document forgery, international child abduction. Diane and Tom didn't fight. They knew. Truth, once unearthed, had its own momentum. Their American citizenship was revoked, and they were deported to Serbia. No dramatic courtroom scenes. No appeals. Just a quiet flight and a closed chapter. Lauren stayed. She wasn't biologically theirs either, but she was born here, an anchor child, a shield. First, she avoided me, eyes full of questions she didn't dare ask. Then, one chilly afternoon, she appeared at my door with 2 cups of coffee. She sat on my couch, turned the cup in her hands, and said, I didn't know, Emily. I swear. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a beginning. We talk now, cautiously, like navigating a house with uneven floors. Mira moved to Chicago last month under a family reunification program. She found a job at a bakery just a few blocks from me, where she works early mornings shaping dough like muscle memory. Sometimes I stop by just to watch her hands work. She told me once, baking is how I learned patience again. She'll be at the wedding, front row. When I handed her the invitation, she touched my face and whispered, Amelia. That name still catches me off guard, but I no longer flinch when I hear it. As for Diane and Tom, I haven't heard from them. And honestly, I don't expect to. They lost everything: citizenship, security, the story they built around me. But I didn't lose. I found something. Someone. Myself. And if you're listening, here's what I've learned. 1. The truth will find you. No matter how deeply it's buried, no matter who tries to rewrite your story, truth has a way of surfacing. 2. Blood doesn't define family, but lies will destroy it. I didn't grow up with Mira, but she never lied to me. That means more than 1,000 bedtime stories built on fiction. 3. Your pain deserves a voice. For years, I silenced my unease to protect the people who weren't protecting me. Never again. Foreclosure is not always gentle. Sometimes justice is brutal. And sometimes it's exactly what sets you free. 5. You can begin again even with a broken past. My name is Amelia Kovac. I'm getting married next spring. And this time, no one gets to rewrite my beginning. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true life stories that deserve to be heard.